And finally, after a while, the Canada Border Service Agency officer finally says, okay, well, the reason we're doing this is because, Nathaniel, your passport has been flagged. You have a warrant out for your arrest.
This is what the Canadian government is doing to us. In my father's case, the Crown prosecutor, and I believe in naming names, because our oppressors do not get to get away with this without being named and shamed.
And it was interesting to see, but it's great to see that there's actual support in America, in Europe, and other places in the world, while the Canadian government and Canadians here, they just don't understand it. But Eastern Europeans, people that lived through this specifically the most, they understand communism, they understand the steps that it takes to become a communist country.
Adam Soos here for Rebel News, and I am now joined by Nathaniel Pawlowski, the son of Pastor Artur Pawlowski. A couple sort of big stories in the last few days that I wanted to discuss with you. Probably the biggest one in my opinion, maybe not the one that made the most headlines, but your incredible sort of testimony and witness in European Parliament. But before we talk about that, I kind of want to get to the bottom of what happened upon your return from that important trip where you talked about what happened to your dad, what's happening in Canada. When you landed in Montreal, you were sort of held up and they sort of gave the impression that there was charges pending, potentially even a warrant. Tell us about what happened.
So I flew to Brussels, Belgium, to the European Parliament to testify, and getting out of the country, no problems, right? If I had a warrant or any sort of legal issues, it would have flagged up when I tried to leave the country using my passport out of the port of entry. Right. No problem, so I left the country, no passport flags, and well, coming back on Friday into Montreal, where I had a layover, the customs border guards are kind of treating me and my mom a little bit differently, right? We're being led to different booths, different windows, different corridors, and eventually we're led to an interrogation room where they open up your bag, search you, and ask you questions and stuff. So that's what happened to me, and basically they went through everything, asked us questions, why were you there, what's going on, and finally, after a while, the Canada Border Service Agency officer finally says, okay, well, the reason we're doing this is because, Nathaniel, your passport has been flagged. You have a warrant out for your arrest. I had to check the system and make sure that it's not a Canada-wide warrant. It's not a criminal matter. He says, I have a bylaw infraction warrant out of Calgary. So he said, obviously, I'm not going to arrest you here. They don't have jurisdiction over municipal matters. So what we're going to do is just you go about flying back to Calgary, but you might have issues with CPS when you arrive. Obviously, the way my family fights is we get loud, we share the story, we expose. So I started doing interviews and shows and stuff out of the airport, and eventually the story got really, really big, actually probably getting more views than even the speech in Parliament. And the story just exploded, and people are phoning CPS, inquiring, writing emails, letters, and all that stuff. And not long after, an hour or two after, CPS releases a statement on Twitter saying there's no warrant out for this individual, and we actually aren't even aware of any investigations about this individual, which I find a little bit weird because I was charged twice. So obviously they are investigating me because I have two charges, right? So that part of it I don't believe is an accurate statement. They did this exact same thing to my dad when he was touring in the States, right? Yeah. He was touring in the States, embarrassing the Canadian government on the global stage. And finally, when he's coming back 4 months later, he makes sure to call CPS, and the lawyer contacted CPS to ask, is there a warrant out for my arrest? Am I going to be arrested when I arrive? They assured him and the lawyer, no, absolutely not. There's no warrant out for your arrest. And what happened was, when he was in the air, they issued a warrant and they arrested him on the tarmac. You remember that? Yeah. And so I figured, well, they did something similar to me. Right. And obviously, I mean, I'm speculating now, but what I believe happened was the backlash and the pressure on CPS made them rescind that warrant. For my passport to be flagged, there had to have been a warrant. There had to be something wrong. There's nothing wrong with the Canada Border Service Agency system. There had to have been something. Yeah. It could, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that there could have been an error on CPS's part, but it's unlikely. Yeah. It's unlikely. Their system isn't wrong about this. This is Customs Canada. They're pretty good with their system of controlling who's able to come in and out and controlling the safety of the country. So I have every reason to believe that their system was right, and I don't have very much trust in CPS considering their treatment and the amount of lies they've told to my family, they did to my dad. No, there's no warrant out for your arrest, and then they arrested him on the tarmac, right? So
most people wouldn't think of, other than maybe Christina Anderson and some of these, like a few names, as a place where there's a concern. But really, outside of Canada, everyone was watching your dad's story. Everyone was watching the Freedom Convoy. Very many Canadians did not pay attention to the level that other nations were in seeing what happened here. So what gave rise to the opportunity for you to go speak at European Parliament?
Well, the European Parliament decided they're going to have a citizens' initiative called Truth and Freedom. And basically what it was actually regarding is sort of the eroding of our rights and freedoms under the guise of health. I had 4 minutes to speak, and that's what I did.
And remember, all of this is being done under the guise of health, safety, and protecting us. By stripping our rights and ushering in tyranny, we must not allow Canada to treat its citizens, and especially clergy, this way. The WHO has structured a way to take away our rights, and our local governments are doing that.
And my dad appeared via video.
From my house arrest, I pose this question to you, honorable members of the European Parliament. How many nights in cold cell would you endure for freedom?
And I'll tell you this, after mine and my dad's presentation, which was back-to-back, everyone in the room was crying. Members of European Parliament were crying. It was very emotional, standing ovation. It was really a beautiful experience. It's really disheartening to see that Canadians don't get it, but Eastern Europeans, people that lived through this specifically the most, people from the Czech Republic, people from Croatia, people that have actually, Hungary, people that have experienced this sort of similarities in history, they are very supportive. So that's where we actually get the most support, because they get it. They understand communism. They understand the steps that it takes to become a communist country. They see the signs, and they are the most receptive. You know, Christine Anderson, she's from East Germany. Yeah. So she understands. This is actually what it looks like. And what I saw in European Parliament was really amazing. There were placards of the Solidarity Movement, commemorating the Solidarity Movement, like permanent placards. They've been there since, I believe, 2011. Yeah. I counted 7, and I didn't even go to the other buildings and see, but I counted 7. And they are commemorating and praising the Solidarity Movement, while the Canadian government is actually criminalizing the Solidarity Movement. So any kind of resistance to the government, they're saying, well, that's mischief. That's inciting mischief, what you're doing, right? That's what they're claiming. This judge that found my father guilty, he has essentially said in his submission that anyone who participated in the truck convoy, anyone who was at Coots, is guilty of mischief, which means my dad was guilty of inciting mischief. That's what they're claiming. So they're criminalizing a sermon that references the Solidarity Movement, while the European Parliament reveres the Solidarity Movement. So there's differences there. And it was interesting to see, but it's great to see that there's actual support in America, in Europe, and other places in the world, while the Canadian government and Canadians here, they just don't understand it. As of right now, we've lost our freedoms, right? We've seen with the inquiry, with the Emergency Act and invocation, they're getting away with it. Canada's lost. We need help. We need international help from America, from Europe, from global support. We need help here in Canada. We need liberation. We're at a very dangerous place. And my dad being found guilty is just proof that if a pastor can go down, anyone can go down, right? Historically, pastors were revered, respected. In our criminal code, we actually have laws protecting pastors. So we know that even historically in Canada, pastors were treated differently. So if a pastor can be treated like this, anyone can be treated like this. This is a very dangerous place we're at in Canada, where your speech can mean you're inciting mischief. So if I say anything, even if you're a politician or a media personality, you say anything, well, a judge can say you're inciting mischief, right? Well, I said, go stand for your rights, do this union strike. Jagmeet Singh did that, but he's not found guilty for inciting mischief. Other union strikes where they said take the bridge, when they were taking all sorts of infrastructure things, they're not found guilty. So it's obviously a thought crime. We're being found guilty for thought crimes because we believe differently. We have different opinions. We disagree with the status quo. We disagree with what the government is doing, and they're criminalizing that.
A charge that has a penalty of up to 10 years in prison. This case sets a precedent to all Canadians and the world, if you allow this to happen, that anybody, including politicians and media, do not have the freedom to say or express what they have on their hearts, for fear that what they say is mischief and could be liable to prison.
it was a cry for help. What I said is we're at a very dangerous place. These leaders have gone unchecked for so long. They're acting like mad emperors. They're acting like tyrants of old. And I see remarkable similarities between Trudeau and Caligula. All right, he's been called Castro, Hitler. He's been called all these things, but I see the most similarities between him and Caligula. And who followed Caligula? Well, we also had Nero down the line. So that's a fear I have, is who's going to follow Trudeau.
Right.
But I'm crying and pleading to the European Parliament, help us, even making a statement. Like, remember what Christine Anderson did? She was the only politician, even in Canada, there was not one. She was the only person to stand up and say, what Trudeau is doing is evil, it's wrong. And that was just so like uplifting for us Canadians. It was a very crucial time for us, and someone on a world stage went and said it on our behalf, and that was just an amazing thing. So I'm saying, please do that again. We need help as Canadians.
And for folks out there, obviously your family's been targeted, but they've been sort of a flashpoint. But this isn't just about your family. There are pastors right across this country, some very much like your father, some who couldn't be more different than your father. They've all been targeted. There have been protesters. Regardless of your conduct, regardless of your behavior, regardless of how lawful or unlawful you are, if you hold the wrong ideas in Justin Trudeau's Canada, you're fair game, and that needs to absolutely change. So Nathaniel, I want to thank you for providing this update, clearing up sort of that first story, but also sharing about your experience. If folks haven't had a chance to check out his speech, make sure that you do so. We'll try to include a link to that. Nathaniel Pawlowski, thank you so much for joining me, and for everyone at home, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. For Rebel News, I'm Adam Soos. We are doing screenings right across this country over the coming month to ensure that you get your tickets, because these tickets are going fast. Go to savethechristians.ca. Get your tickets now. Come and support this important initiative and make sure that folks never forget what happened throughout COVID-19. Again, that URL is savethechristians.ca.